And welcome to the Barry Foster Show, now on YouTube, originating from the Ridge Flora Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. I'd like to remind you, if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for the program, just drop us a line at the barryfostershow@gmail.com or put your suggestions in the comments below. We're glad to get back to you. Want a certain guest you'd like us to talk to, and we're going to have that hooked up very soon, where we can do some phone interviews and some other kind of projects, so we'll have that. And if there's topics you'd like us to talk about, well, gosh, we can do that too. We try to put up a new episode each and every weekday here, and if you would please like and subscribe our YouTube page, share it with a friend, and join our pages at the Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram, that would be very helpful. John Larsen in the studios with us this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, John. And over the weekend, President Trump and the First Lady and a little entourage, I think Senators Cruz and John Cronin were there, Kristi Noem, they all went up to Texas to see the devastation in Kerrsville, and it's just horrible.
It is absolutely horrible. Still, I think well over 100 people still missing. Mm-hmm. And they did take a break this weekend, I think probably for mental and physical well-being of the folks that are doing this, because that has to be an unbelievable task to try and take out. You know the people are gone. You're trying to find their body.
Yeah, it's a recovery mission.
It's got to be a very mentally taxing situation, especially when you're dealing with children.
I made a new friend who is a nurse, and he works at a hospital here in Florida, and he was telling me how tired he was because so many of his patients end up dying. And I did remind him that we all are going to die, but it's got to be difficult to. Why? I just saw Joe here yesterday, and now he's gone, or Mary, or whoever, and so it's a tough thing. And to be around that. I remember 2 years after the hurricane came ashore in Fort Myers Beach, we went down there, and it was still just devastated, and we loved that place. And we would go down there for fun, and the T-shirt shop was just gutted. I mean, things were just gone, and it was hard. It was hard to be down there. I told Sandra, I said, "This is hard to do," But we were making reservations for the next summer to come in another 6 months, and we went down there to have quote unquote some fun down there, and that was 2.5, probably almost 3 years since it happened. This is still very fresh, and the rubble is everywhere.
Yeah, it reminds me so much of the desert devastation in North Carolina after the hurricane last year, and when you look at the pictures, it's almost identical. Trees and cars and RVs and that just piled up on top of one another in what was the riverbed and so on. But when you listen to how fast that came in, they said the water rose like 20 feet in like 45 minutes.
Yes.
I mean, unless you got out immediately, there was no way you could outrun that. You couldn't.
Our pastor told us a story about a guy who came and was shouting at this woman and her kid, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, getting them out of the house. And he finally woke them up, honking his horn, and got him to come across and got them out. And then went the next day. There was nothing but the concrete pad. It was gone.
Yep. And it was a sad story. I watched that Trump visit down there. I watched the whole thing, and there were some really, tough stories they had to tell. And even the president, you could see that he and his wife, although she was very quiet, she didn't say anything during the so-called interview, talking part of it. But you could see that I think they were touched like almost any human being would be under the circumstances.
She's promised to come back.
Yeah.
She's promised to go back.
And so on. So there's a lot to do there. It's another tragic situation and whatnot, for whatever reason. But it sounds like, and I've asked the question here. I asked the person in charge of, those kind of situations here in Highlands County. Do we have warning sirens? We do not.
No.
We do not. So they say, well, there's very few tornadoes here. Well, it only takes one.
Yeah,
it only takes one.
There's really the way Highlands County is spread out, that's difficult. It's a blessing and a curse. it is like a vicious turtle coming at us when we watch the hurricanes. And which way is it going to go? And it wobbles a little bit this way, it wobbles a little bit that way. I mean, we want it to wobble the other way, which is whichever is further away from us.
Right.
And so but we have time to get prepared.
During a hurricane, but I'm talking mainly about
I know.
tornadoes,
Or
which
flash
sometimes
floods.
spin off.
Yes.
Tornadoes spin off of hurricanes a lot of times, and it's the tornado that you don't have any warning, very little warning.
No.
And that's why these places like Kansas and those part of the countries that are inundated with tornadoes, they have warning sirens all around the
And
communities.
they're getting better about that.
Yes, and whatnot, so it just sounds like in that area, because I guess that river has flooded before, not to this degree. This was like a 1 in 100, 150
Yeah.
years, but it has flooded like this before and whatnot. So it does say to you, okay, this time it was 1 in 100, 1 in 500, whatever. But we need some way. You call people on it. They put out the alerts on the phones like 45 minutes before or whatever it was. But at 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, you may not be even listening to your phone or
No.
hear your phone. Okay, so that phone thing was good for those that have their phone next to their bed, maybe. But you need something different, something better, something louder that's going to get people's attention.
If you call me at night, I'm not going to hear it.
No.
I'm done getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and coming in doing the news. I did that for about a half a century.
Long
So
time.
I'm about done with that.
Long
And-
time.
And now this is not enough stress on the president, and he's not getting enough. He's not even drawing enough attention to this situation that he's got to fight at home with Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, and Pam Bondi all crossing swords here over the Epstein files.
Yep, and again, I like Dan Bongino. I listened to him and his podcast. He really loved his podcast, and believe me, I watched the last show he did before he took over the FBI position, and literally he was in tears having to give up his podcast. He had his whole crew there, and they were, everybody was happy and sad at the same time. So you knew that was a big part of his life that he was going to leave behind and whatnot. But I was disappointed. I know the stories came out, and he probably said nothing, but it came out that, he was going to quit over this and so on. To me, that's the wrong way to go. I think if you've got the situation, you've got to stand there. If you feel that passionate about it, you've got to fight for what it is you want.
We've seen Dan Bongino, and he can be a bit of a volatile character.
Yes, he can.
He can be, and I can see it is very much on the same vein as the called third strike that makes the batter go nuts and he gets thrown out of the game, and that kind of thing. And it looks like Daddy Donald Trump is going to have to come home and make peace here and say, look, I need all of you here, and there may be some people who come in afterwards and say, look, you say you were wrong about this, they'll say they were wrong about that, and we'll pour oil on the water here and get things put back together. But our friend, I use the term loosely, our friend Alex Jones has a philosophy that Donald Trump has a list and may have even more than a list, and is using that information to move his political enemies out of the way and get them to resign their positions to spend more time with their family and start a new business. And he is quietly using that information, and they're being forced to backtrack. No, there's no list. No, Epstein didn't kill himself. And I was listening that there's a minute or 2 minutes of blank space where nothing happens, and that's where people are saying, "Oh, that's where it is," and it put me very much in mind of the Nixon tapes, where there was an 18-minute blank that the secretary said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I took my foot off the off the pedal and it erased it." And they had her show how it didn't happen that way. So I think that there may be, it's taken us how long, 50 years, more than 50 years to get the Kennedy tapes, and the Martin Luther King information. And so you and I may not be alive when this all comes to light, but I think that there's a vast amount of intrigue that's going on here, which not everybody apparently is privy to.
Well, the other thing that made it bad was if you go back about a month and a half, maybe 2 months, the Attorney General came out and said, I have the list and that on my desk.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you've got the list on your desk. And now you come out a month and a half later and you say there is no list.
Well,
that looks very, very suspicious.
She said, I heard the tape. She says, I have it on my desk. And now what she's saying is, when I said it, I meant I had the Epstein files, I had the MLK files, I had the Kennedy file, I had the files on my desk. But that's what when I said I have it, I have the Epstein file on my desk. And she is intimating, I think, I don't want to put words in Pam Bondi's mouth, but I didn't know whether there was a list in there or not. I had the file on my desk. I haven't looked at it yet. But my people have given me this.
Well, the other thing that Bongino had done on his podcast, because I watched it regularly when it was on,
yes,
he talked for a year or 2 years about the Epstein file. So he was razzed up going into the FBI about the Epstein file, because I've talked about it for 2 years or whatever. I know the scoop. I have some of the inside information, because he still had a lot of contacts in the CIA and the FBI that he talked to regularly. So that was one of his big issues going into that job. And then it was like, okay, he was cut off at the knees by this latest statement that there is no file, they committed suicide and all that. So I'm sure that he feels like he was somewhat betrayed. I think that is his feeling. That's my opinion, not his opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that. So in that case, I can understand why he'd be very frustrated.
I have heard stories about drug busts that have gone on and things where an agency goes in and performs a law enforcement action, and a second agency comes in and goes, "You went too soon. We had an investigation on this other guy that we had not yet completed, and we were letting them go ahead until we had our stuff ready. But now what you've done is you've kind of torpedoed our action, and so now because you've done this, we what we consider a bigger fish. We may have lost a bigger fish or even a bigger story than what you were able to do with this in their idea, maybe a penny ante drug bust. Okay, so I wonder sometimes if there are things in this going on that are above and beyond what the scope of this is. And I can't think of people who need to know more than the Attorney General, the head of the FBI, and the assistant head of the FBI, who need to know this stuff. But there may be there may be Interpol, there may be even bigger things. Donald Trump has been accused of playing 5D chess. That the stuff that he's doing is way up here. So when this happens, I wonder to myself, is there something even bigger happening that they're trying to keep a lid on this until they can get it sorted out?
Well, I'm glad to see that he did indicate in what I saw this morning that he did have a conversation with Bongino, which is good. I think, my opinion, and I've said this to a couple people before, I think what he should do, and I'm talking Trump, okay, we have three people, Kash Patel, Bongino, and Pam Bondi. Get them in a room privately and say, okay, what's the story? What's your side, what's your side, what's your side? And then if Trump has to make a decision, whether it's a personnel decision or not, then he's the boss. Let him make the decision. But he's got to hear from all of you. At the same time, his administration is really moving along at warp speed for the 6 months or so
Trump
he's been there.
speed, yes.
I mean, unbelievable. So I don't want to see what he's doing get derailed by this interaction between three of his key people. So I'd like to see him put this to bed, and maybe he did with the meeting with Bongino. Maybe that's enough of it. I don't know. But we'll see what happens going forward.
And the media is salivating over this.
Absolutely. They love everything that possibly upsets Trump or his administration. Thereafter, if it doesn't exist, they'll create it. and start a fire.
And that's why we haven't seen much about the big beautiful bill. And the big beautiful bill, as we talked about last week, has really codified a bunch of executive orders. So it used to that the new president could come in and say, all those executive orders, they're gone. That's what Trump did, you know. And what Trump has done is really, again, not ahistorical, because we remember Obama saying, I have a phone, I have a pen, I will bypass Congress. Okay? And that was right at the time, and I still think it holds true, is that executive orders, although they can take care of executive departments like the EPA, for instance, or some other executive department, it's not the law of the land. It's not the rule of law.
Nope.
We don't have a king here.
Right.
Okay, we didn't have a king under Obama. We don't have a king under Trump. Trump can undo executive orders that existed, and for a while when he had a Democrat or a Congress that wouldn't comply, that's what he did. He undid a bunch of stuff by undoing the Obama executive orders and the Biden executive orders, for that matter.
Absolutely.
But now the big beautiful bill has codified those into law. Yeah, an executive order does not undo the law.
Well, now they're coming to the part of the continuing resolution where they actually, codify it, but they also budget the money for it. And Schumer is saying, and he said this before, all right, I will not allow that to happen. I will shut down the government. Well, we'll see. When push comes to shove, that seems to be a holy grail in Congress. If you're going to be accused of shutting down the government over a taxing situation or a bill situation, that's like imposing a death sentence on yourself. So we'll see. Schumer has done this before, and when midnight came, Schumer backed off. He does not, and Democrats are in such deep water right now, I don't think they want to be accused of shutting down the government, because if that happens, then you're going to see a lot of Republican stories about grandma over here didn't get this, little child over here didn't get that, the dramatic results of that. And by the way, Chuck Schumer and all you Democrats, you did that. You did it.
And when the government shuts down, I think this is a golden opportunity for private sector charities, private sector service organizations to begin to help the local people. Mrs. McGillicuddy doesn't get her groceries. Let's see how we can help. Our church has a fund for that kind of things. When people in the church, and we have the sick and the afflicted, and the homebound, we have those people. And so when they, in fact, I have people who on Facebook sometimes will, I have this terrible problem. What do I do? So I said, do you have a church home? And I've had people literally say, what does that mean? What does that mean? I said, well, do you go to church anywhere?
Right.
Well, no. I said, well, this is, as a church, and the church is the people, not the building, the church gets together and they take care of the widow McGillicuddy. And so I think it's up to us as individuals to help when we see these kinds of needs and get them where they don't depend on the government anymore.
I'll tell you, there are so many stories cropping up now because of the cutbacks on Medicaid and food stamps and so on. Oh my gosh, you would think that the end of the world is here. But they show some of these videos, and this one woman said, I have 10 children with 10 baby daddies, okay?
Oh my gosh.
And I'm getting thousands of dollars a month for food stamps to feed my 10 children. But she has 10 children, none of them have a father. They all have a different father, okay? But she was very proud of getting what she was getting on food stamps. And she looked very healthy. I'm going to say she's probably in her 30s or whatever. She could work. Okay, and there were a number of stories like that this past week with the cuts that are coming.
Oh, yeah.
About, you could work. Work? Are you kidding? I don't work. Okay, the government feeds me this. The government gives me that. The government gives me this. And we have created this society now of people that say, no, the government owes me. You owe me that.
Oh, yeah.
You owe me that.
Oh, yeah.
All right? I've gotten it for so long. It's mine.
There's a woman, and I reposted this, who was on I think it's from the libs of TikTok, and she was very proud that she was quote unquote professionally disabled, and they were sending her all this money. And then she had another person, Sandra and I have had a lively discussion about whether this person was male or female. But anyway, they said, and I get paid because I take care of you. And she said, well, you would do it for free. He goes, yeah, but why should I do it for free when the government will pay me to do it? So she's getting paid, and their partner, whatever it is also getting paid to do this. And I thought, she's got to get her a job at the, doing something at the 7-Eleven. I don't care.
There was this husband and wife that put together a scheme where they created food stamp cards, okay, and used others' identification to keep loading up these cards. They were then over $400,000 they stole from the system by using these these EBT cards that they took the information from someone else and put it on a card. And so over $400,000.
Well, and I think Doge, and there was a Florida Doge, which I think is still going on, and they're going to be ferreting these people out. And I think those people are going to be getting free room and board for a while. Maybe not at Alligator Alcatraz, but somewhere.
By the way, I thought I heard them say this weekend that it's almost filled down there. They put so many people down there, it's almost, I heard 1,000, but then I heard somebody else say 3,000. So it's somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000, but from what I heard this weekend, they said it's almost filled.
Yeah, and the White House has been pushing back against, they've had some reports about it's hot and there's bugs and the White House says, no, it's Florida. Okay, it's Florida. Yes, it's hot. Yes, there are bugs, okay?
But they have air conditioners.
But they have AC in there.
Yes.
And they have proper medical. They get proper food.
Yep.
A bunch of the Congress people went down there to
Wasserman Schultz
to look at them, and they wouldn't let them. They wouldn't let them in to see.
Wasserman Schultz got in to inspect it, and she's calling it the gulag, and
Of course they are.
Yeah, it's you would die if you go there, and so on. No, it looks very orderly, it looks very clean, very organized. They got the beds that are all behind wire fences and so on, are their beds.
Chain link fence, yeah.
Right, and so on. So they've got all the facilities, and they talked about the number of security guards and that they have. So that's taken care of and whatnot. I think it's going to work out well, but of course everybody's opposed to it because, this is the first kind of thing like this, and how dare you, and so on. So a lot of saber rattling, but really this is the kind of thing they need.
Well, understand, number one, okay, this is not a prison. This is a detention facility. And I think that most of those guys are going to be there that long.
No.
That they're going to be there, they're going to be processed and be sent out.
Yeah.
And they put them in a place where if they escape, they're not going to escape. Mm-hmm. It's in a place much like Alcatraz, which was surrounded by the very cold San Francisco Bay, and they would have, frozen to death trying to gotten
swim out of there.
Yeah,
right.
That this is something to keep them where they need to be kept for the short term. Mm-hmm. And somebody pointed out to me, the conditions at Alligator Alcatraz are better than probably the conditions in their home country.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said, it looks very clean, very organized, and they have all the situations they need there. You're right, medical. They got, kitchen help. They're going to be preparing, 3 meals a day and so on. But you're also right that their length of stay there is going to be pretty short.
Yeah.
They want to get rid of them. They want to send them back to where they came from as quickly as possible.
Well, yesterday we talked a little bit about some of the good news where Florida now ranks number 3 in business. It's a top destination for business according to the Florida Council of 100. And I was really happy to see that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has pulled the plug on both PBS and NPR. Mm-hmm. That there were state monies going to the PBS radio stations, $1.3 million for radio, and $4.4 million for the NPR TV, and they've just pulled the plug. And again, this has happened in the past, and I think this is going to really show what do the listeners and viewers of these two stations, how much are they willing to pay for it? I mean, there are many. If you want Netflix, you don't get it for free.
No.
Okay, you don't get Netflix for free. There's a lot of these things that if you want them, Newsmax, and you have to subscribe. Okay, so now they will have to, instead of getting it for free, having the taxpayers pay for it. This happened back, I think, under the first Bush administration, Bush the Elder, and they were crowing about all of this money that had come in, these listener support. And I called them up during their drive, and I said, you ought to thank George Bush for pulling the plug on this funding. And they got really mad, and they said, what do you mean? I said, he doesn't pull the plug, you don't get all these donations. All these people are showing you how much they love you and how much they care for you and how much, and they hung up on me. Of course they hung up on me. But I think that if you want that far left news, you can buy it. I mean, knock yourselves out.
And that was the real reason why they went after them, is that all of their storylines are one-sided. It's like
Yes.
reading AP.
Yes.
If you read AP, look at the language and look at how it's structured, because it is mind-boggling how much they try to put into your head by reading their articles. All right, this is such a bad situation, and what they create that. And NPR and PBS did the same thing. They were so one-sided. Something had to be done.
Well, there was a survey done after the election showing how the news and storylines of NPR paralleled the Clinton talking points, and it was all designed to help Bill Clinton get elected.
Right.
And everyone kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, "Yeah, well, what else is new?" And up until now 40 years later, finally somebody's doing something about it. And there was a time back in the olden days when people didn't get TV or didn't get radio.
Right.
And so the National Public Radio and the public broadcasting system was put in for those people. Now, I don't know anybody, no matter how rich or how poor, that doesn't have a cell phone with information they can get absolutely free of charge.
Right, absolutely.
You know?
That's a big part of it and whatnot. But again, you're going to hear a hue and cry, because all of these things that they are targeting, or a good portion of them, are Democrat programs or Democrat controlled or Democrat funneled, whatever. And so now when you start to disrupt all of this, oh my God, they're taking away some of our funding. Oh my God, they're taking away some of our listeners or our viewers, and so on. That begins to hurt. The other thing, even in the mainstream part of it, CNN and MSNBC are both on the brinks of going under.
Yes.
Matter of fact, all three of the big networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS, are also financially in the same situation. People are not watching them anymore because you have so much content available to you on YouTube. You do
Yes.
not need to watch these people, and they're not.
People are listening to the Barry Foster Show on YouTube.
Absolutely.
They're listening to Victor David Hanson on YouTube.
Absolutely.
Now you've transitioned off mainstream media to
Absolutely.
podcast.
Other than a few shows that I watch on Newsmax, which is still a very conservative, much more conservative than Fox News. Very good and whatnot. So I watch a few people there, commentators that I really like, but the bulk of my viewing time is now on YouTube.
And they archive, and I have heard, I have not seen this yet, but Anderson Cooper of CNN, who may not be the most conservative guy you know, had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on, who was wildly whining about the people getting into her family's finances because of the way that they seemed to have been making money. And he didn't seem real sympathetic. I think that at least CNN, I don't know about MSNBC, but it sounds like CNN is trying to come back to the middle to try to recoup. I think it's probably too little too late.
I think it is.
But at any rate, you can still find this on the internet. You don't have to go and watch CNN to see this.
And if there's a subject that you want to know something about, I don't care what it is, you can find it on YouTube.
Yes.
It is there. From how do I get rid of ants to how do I build a multi-story building.
Yes.
It's there, and so on, and it's free for the watching. So you can get a lot of information, but also gain, I think, a lot of education by watching a lot of these different shows, different speakers.
I'll give you a little inside baseball. We're going to set up a phone system here, and I have to set up to make the phone system work. It's a thing called a mix minus operation. I just ordered the cables.
Okay.
And I'm going to YouTube University to learn.
There you go.
To learn how to set this up.
There you
so
go.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I watched a YouTube video on how to replace the pull rope on my mower.
Okay.
You know, to get that done. It is absolutely amazing the things you can find. And people have asked me, and the question is, soon we'll be going to other platforms. Right now, just YouTube. Just focus it all in one place.
Yep.
You know, speaking of leftists, I was very, very heartened to see Axios, which again may not be most conservative service, but they are forced to admit it's so far so good for the Trump economy. You know, they've talked about how his market policy and the policy developments have been a wind at his back. That the tariffs have not been nearly as bad as what the leftist economists had predicted. There's some hiccups here, but the tariff money continues. More than $100 billion in tariffs over the past 5 or 6 weeks have just piled up.
Right, and now he put the August 1st deadline on Canada and Mexico, the big two, if you will. 30%, I think it is at the present time, although that number fluctuates one way or the other, but 30% on both of them. So we will see. Right now, I did see comments from the people in Canada saying that, that we're disturbed by this, kind of blah, blah, but we hope to negotiate between now and August 1st. So I think in the end, both of them are not going to be able to replace the American economy for their customer base. They're not because we're on the border with both of them. So they're going to have to come in. Scheinblum down in Mexico is rattling sabers, and now she's saying that I want the people in America to rile up and create mayhem, if you will, in the streets of America, which is not going to enamor her to Trump at all. So I think both of them are going to be talking to someone within the next 2 weeks to try and get this thing settled.
And I think in the interim, you're starting to see more American businesses begin to fire up and do the kinds of things because they are making it increasingly attractive to do business in the Americas as well, mostly the Sunshine State. And I want to start a series. I know for years you and I have talked about Made in America, and I have a call into Nucor and to Natalie's Orange Juice, which is a citrus down by Vero Beach. Their only product in their orange juice is oranges, and I want to talk to them about Made in America. There's a place up here in Frostproof which mirrors a lot of other places. It's called the Choppin' Block.
Okay.
The beef is grown right here in Highlands County, in a place called Dark Hammock. His facility is up in Frostproof, which is next neighboring Polk County. But it is, when we went in there, we said, look, we bought ground beef. The price was better than the local grocery mart. And I said, and we trust it more, not necessarily in that order, because we know Dark Hammock is right here. We know Baxter Troutman. And so we're going to try to do a whole series of Made in America products because I think that the tariffs are doing two of what things that Donald Trump wants. He wants to level the international playing field, but he wants to make it better for Americans to get out and produce things.
Absolutely. I think one of the things, and there's a story in Epic Times this Friday, it was just the other day, and that broke down the bill that they just passed, big, beautiful bill, and how it affects your wallet in the United States.
Oh, really?
And it was good because the automotive industry, what he's trying to do is for cars that are assembled in America only, these are the only ones that qualify, whether it's a Ford, whatever, they have to be assembled here in the United States. He's giving people up to a $10,000 tax break. You can deduct the interest that you pay on your car if it's made in America. So that is done to help the automotive industry. And having been in the automotive industry for the most of my life, I can tell you that the downstream operations to the automotive industry employ thousands and thousands and thousands of people across the country because the automotive manufacturer makes very few, if any, parts for their cars. They buy it from sub-suppliers, and those sub-suppliers employ people. The people that supply the materials to those sub-suppliers employ people. So the chain, if you will, of the employees that are involved in the automotive industry is massive. And so I think this is going to help boost people. We used to be able to deduct interest, you remember, years ago. And they did away with that. Now he's bringing it back so it will employ more American people.
And I think as the American economy begins to build up and some of the things that we used to find made in China, made in Mexico, made wherever, are finding American alternatives, some of these countries are going, oh, wait a minute. In fact, I just got a report that China's rare earth exports are up 32%. And that was part of the deal that he was making as part of the tariff deals, that they would begin to loosen some of these other things. And I think China is saying, let's at least throw them a bone. Let's get this taken care of. So you're starting to see these other countries starting coming around because, my gosh, if you start buying stuff made in America and don't buy our stuff anymore, then we're really going to be in the soup.
Right.
Don't let them get started. Well, I have bad news. We're started.
Yep, and I'll tell you, this morning driving up, I saw at least 3 stations, gas price $2.85.
Oh, really?
$2.85, yes. So that, I hope that stays. Tomorrow will be the telling day, because usually they do this. They bring it down during the week, and then on Tuesdays, bingo, bango, it goes back up again.
The least expensive I saw it here a few weeks right before the Independence Day holiday was $2.79.
Right.
It got down to $2.79, which was the lowest I'd seen in a long time.
Right.
But I know Trump has let on that he's working on the ceasefire deal in the Gaza Strip. He says he's hoping it's going to be done this week.
Right.
So the more peace that he can keep in the Middle East, the more stable situation and the more good reason it is for gas prices to go down and stay down. We'll see how that goes. I haven't, we're just maybe a half a mile away from the cheapest gas station in Highlands County. And last I looked, they were $2.93. So
$2.85.
$2.85.
Yes,
Yeah.
$2.85. Yep. And the one right here at the corner, which I think is one
Yeah,
of the prime,
yeah.
they were $2.87.
$2.87.
$2.87. Yeah. So they're a couple pennies more than 2 or 3 of them down the road.
Well,
and so on. But,
that's on my way home, so I'm going to gas it up
yeah,
here.
there you go.
Honey, I'm gassing the car up. But I think that, and as the gas prices come down, it's going to level out the costs of things. In fact, there's this guy who is, there's this person, he logs up as a woman, but I think it's a guy, who was posted this thing about bell peppers were $3.79 a pound somewhere. I said, where's that, California? He said, well, I don't. Well, you have to go find that out. I said, no, you're the one that posted it. And I said, so are you arguing that you would rather? And he was thanking the Orange Man for deporting the picking crews and upping the tariffs. And I said, well, are you arguing that if we had the underpaid illegals picking it, we get a better price? You know, I said, oh, are you saying that we should just go ahead and not buy American products and let them dump cheap produce on the shores of the country? No answer.
Right.
I said, you know, I understand what you're, and I think that the Democrats, who have been, I think, pretty much taken over by the radical arm,
Oh, my gosh, yes.
are advocating for those kinds of things. And I don't think it's, you know, I can tell you that in the early 1800s, when they were going to try to get rid of slavery, they said, do you know what you're going to be paying for a shirt? You're paying 50 cents for that shirt now. Why, you'll be paying $2 or $3 for that shirt because we won't have slave labor. And so, you know, they're putting themselves on the side of slave labor against people who chant death to America and the failure of the United States. I don't think they've positioned themselves, even with illegal voters, I don't think they've positioned themselves well.
The other thing we have to mention, too, is that for all of these illegals that they capture now and then send them back or put them in jail, whatever their status is, all right, if that company wants to stay in business, guess what? They're now going to have to go out and hire citizens.
Yes.
And citizens, you might have to pay another $2 or $3 an hour because you had all this cheap labor, or in some cases, like the California marijuana plant, factory, or grass growing, or
pot growing
field,
company,
pot growing, and children.
Yes.
They had children working there, which if they paid them at all, it probably was only pennies, and so on. So this is going to create more jobs across the country.
They're under investigation for child labor.
Oh,
I'll
they
tell you
should
that
be.
right now.
Oh, absolutely, they should be.
And so, yeah, will prices go up? Well, yeah, and you can thank Bernie Sanders, who lobbied for the $20 an hour minimum wage.
Yep.
And because the minimum wage is so high, because then your costs of your goods and services also go up, because if the minimum wage goes up, then all the other wages follow suit and go up. So yeah, you're going to be paying more, but you can thank Bernie Sanders for that.
Well, the other thing that in that bill, again, it talked about the tax on tips, and I was trying to find the number, but I thought I saw it was upwards of you could deduct $25,000 a year if you make that much on
Wow.
tips. So that's a hefty sum. But some people in the service industry, the bulk of their income is tips.
Yes.
Not their wage. Their wage may be $3 or $4 an hour, $5 an hour, because the owner of the establishment knows you're going to make a lot more money on your tip money. That's always been taxed. Now it's not. Upwards, I think, of $25,000, I thought was the amount that you will not be taxed. So
And a lot of these servers have to share their tips with the
busboy.
with the busboy.
Yes.
And they have what they call runners, where I take your order and I turn it in, but somebody else brings your food to the table. You have to
Right.
share it with them.
Yep.
So let's say you tip them 20%. They don't get all that 20%.
No.
Some of that gets funneled off to other people who also work on those tips.
Right.
And so there's going to be some mitigating of prices, and they may not go down right away, but you have to consider that we're funneling this back, and always look for the American flag and look for the made in USA, not distributed by somebody in the United States.
Right.
I've seen these ones distributed by so-and-so. Well, you keep looking, oh, it's made in China, but it's distributed by these
Right.
people.
Yep.
Or sometimes they can't get all, it says some outsourced products, because some of the things you can't get. The gum that makes the eraser on your pencil, they don't have that in the United States.
Well, the biggest company in the world, okay, is located in this country when it comes to marketing, if you will. And what they do is they take on their almost all their products, it'll say distributed from so and so in Arkansas.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
But you're right. 99.9% of that comes from outside of the country.
And I have, I've told the story before. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. I was in the grocery mart, and there was an 800 number on the pack of this thing, and I called the 800 number, and much to my astonishment, I got somebody on a Saturday, and they said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Can you tell me where this was made?" And she says, "Where are you?" And I told her I was in Sebring, Florida, and she says, "Well, those were made in Indiana, from products grown in Indiana." I said, "Okay, that's all." It was some quote unquote Mexican tortilla chips made in the United
Right.
States.
Yep.
So I mean, sometimes it requires a little bit of work on our part, but I think in the long run it pays off. And we are going the workfare now. The workfare is requiring people to go to work, and I will tell you, it's not as strong as the workfare in the 1990s under Bill Clinton.
No.
Under Bill Clinton had even stronger workfare, and so now people are going to be required to go to work, and I think at some point there are people who have no work ethic, and they're going to have to learn it.
$20 or 20 hours a week. That's all they're going to be required to work. 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can take a look at. There isn't anybody I know that wouldn't, if they could have a job they could live on for 20 hours a week. Okay, I mean, try and get that job if you could today. All right.
I spend more than that on this job, John, and
I know.
and I'm not making a living wage yet, but we're working on it. We're getting some income here. By the way, if you go to thebarryfostershow.net, there's a little button that says support the show. You want to send us some money, you can just send it through PayPal there. We
One of the
appreciate
guys,
that.
like one of the podcasters that I watch regularly, really, really a good guy, and he'll say that, if you'd like to support me, even with a cup of coffee,
Yeah.
I'd be happy. All right.
Oh yeah, if we get enough money, John and I are going to get lunch.
Yeah,
Okay,
a glass of water.
You and I go out to lunch someplace. So we appreciate it so much. Well, again, we're out of time, but don't worry, there's still more to come. You've been listening to the latest edition of the Barry Foster Show, recorded here at the Ridge Flora Studios, located in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. If you have thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for our program, just drop us a line at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. You can check out our YouTube page as we put up new programming on a regular basis. And please subscribe to our YouTube page and join our pages at The Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. And by the way, we've just added a new feature, playlists. And all of the John and Barry programs are on a playlist. So you can go right down and see all of our old shows, and we're always looking for suggestions for our new shows. Yes, I know, we're out of time. We continue to look for truth, justice, and the American way. From the Ridge Flora Studios, John Larsen and Barry Foster, and we'll see you next time.